So hello everyone. In this presentation, we are going to talk about the anti-diabetic drugs. So let's get started. So what is diabetes? Diabetes is caused due to relative or absolute deficiency of insulin in the body, resulting in hyperglycemia. Anti-diabetic drugs will work by three principal mechanisms. One, promoting insulin secretion and inhibiting glucagon secretion from the pancreas. Two, inhibition of glucose absorption from the gastrointestinal tract and release of glucose from the liver, that is by inhibiting the hepatic neoglucogenesis. And third is promoting the glucose excretion from the kidney. Now let us see the classification of antidiabetic drugs. 1. Drugs that promote insulin secretion include sulfonylureas, meglitine analogs, GLP-1 analogs, and the DPP-4 inhibitors. Drugs that inhibit the glucagon secretion include amylin agonists like pramlintide. Drugs that inhibit the glucose absorption from GIT include alpha-glucosidase inhibitors, and drugs that inhibit hepatic neoglucogenesis include biguanides like metformin. Drugs that promote the renal glucose excretion include SGLT2 inhibitors. And some miscellaneous drugs include PPAR gamma agonist or thiazolidinediones and dual PPAR alpha and gamma agonist, which is saroglitazar. Insulin injections also given for treatment of diabetes mellitus. Insulin is basically a peptide hormone of 51 amino acids that is secreted by the beta cells of pancreas. Other than insulin, the beta cell also secretes C-peptide and IAPP, insulin amyloid polypeptide. Insulin and its analogs are given as subcutaneous injections for treatment of diabetes mellitus. So, now let us see the drugs in detail. Sulfonylureas are classified into first generation and second generation drugs. First generations include chlorpropamide, tolbutamide, tolazamide. Second generations include glimepiride, glyclazide, glipizide, glibenclamide. Meglitine analogs include repaglinide, nataglinide. GLP-1 analogs are peptides like exenatide, liraglutide, albiglutide, dulaglutide, semaglutide. DPP-4 inhibitors, that is dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors, include gliptins, that is sitagliptin, linagliptin, vildagliptin, saxagliptin, alogliptin, etc. Amylin agonist includes pramlintide. Alpha-glucosidase inhibitors include acarbose, voglibose, and migliton. Biguanides include metformin, fenformin, out of which fenformin has been banned due to lactic acidosis, so only metformin is available in the market. SGLT2 inhibitors include canagliflozin, dapagliflozin, empagliflozin. PPAR gamma agonist, which include pioglitazone, rosiglitazone. Dual PPAR alpha plus gamma agonist, which is saroglitazar, and insulin analogs, which are further classified based on the duration of action. So let us see in details the classification of insulin. Insulin is classified based on the duration of action into the following types. 1 is the ultra short acting insulin, which starts acting within 15 minutes of injection and lasts up till 3 hours. They include insulin aspart, lispro, and glulicin. The second category includes short acting insulin, which starts working within 30 minutes and the duration of action lasts up till 6 hours. It is regular insulin, which can also be given by the intravenous route. Intermediate acting insulin starts working within 60 minutes and lasts up till 12 hours. It is NPH insulin, neutral protamine, pH dot insulin. And the long acting insulin, which lasts up to 24 hours, that is insulin determined, glargine, and degludec. Degludec lasts up to 42 hours and it is the longest acting insulin. So ultra short and short acting insulins are considered as bolus insulin, that is, they will control the postprandial sugar levels as well as the preprandial sugar of the next meal. And basal insulins basically will control the fasting sugar levels and the basal or the preprandial sugar levels of each meal. Other than this, premix insulin also available, which is a combination of intermediate acting insulin and short or ultra acting insulin. They will last up till 12 hours and they are available in 30-70 or 50-50 ratios, where the 30% is the short or ultra short acting insulin, the 70% the intermediate acting insulin. Now, let us understand what is the mechanism of insulin secretion. Insulin is secreted from the beta cells in the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas, and her secretion is triggered by hyperglycemia. So, whenever there is hyperglycemia, The excess glucose enters through GLUT2 into the excess glucose will enter by the GLUT2 into the beta cells of pancreas. This glucose is metabolized by glycolytic enzymes like glucokinase to ultimately produce pyruvate, and that undergoes electron transport in mitochondria to produce the ATP. This ATP will block the ATP-sensitive potassium channels which are located on the pancreas. This blocks the outward efflux of potassium, and there is intracellular accumulation of potassium which results in depolarization, and this opens the voltage gated calcium channels located on the beta cells of pancreas, which cause an influx of calcium, and this basically stimulates the release of insulin that is produced and stored within the initial beta cells of pancreas. It causes the secretion of the stored insulin, and along with insulin, C-peptide and islet amyloid polypeptide is also being secreted out into the blood. So now, how the antidiabetic drugs promote insulin secretion? The antidiabetic drugs mainly work by blocking the ATP-sensitive potassium channel on the beta cells of islet of Langerhans of pancreas, and thereby promote the secretion of insulin from the pancreas. The drugs which target the ATP-sensitive potassium channel include sulfonylureas and the meglitinin analogs. Now, what are the role of incretins in insulin secretion? Whenever we take in food and the food goes into the GI tract, this stimulates the release of certain hormones from the GI tract which are called as the incretins. These incretins are two in number, GLP-1 and GIP, and they are released in response to increased concentration of glucose in the lumen of the digestive tract. Now these incretins will stimulate the insulin release and inhibit the release of glucagon. These incretins are deactivated or metabolized by DPP4 enzymes. So anti-diabetic drugs have been developed that will target the DPP4. They will inhibit this DPP4 enzyme, thereby prolonging the duration of action of these incretins and thereby potentiating the action of incretin, which results in a greater release of insulin from the pancreas. Also, there are certain drugs which are GLP-1 analogs, that is, they're the analogs of incretins, and thereby the GLP-1 analogs or DPP4 inhibitors will potentiate the action of incretin that stimulates the release of insulin from the beta cells of pancreas upon ingestion of food. Therefore, the incretin analogs potentiate the release of insulin in response to food intake. Now let us talk about the role of PPR gamma agonist in diabetes. These drugs work at the level of the adipose tissue. The adipose tissue cells have a receptor on their surface which is called as the PPR gamma receptor. These drugs stimulate the PPR gamma receptors on the surface of the adipocytes, which causes increase in insulin responsive substances or IRS and increase in GLUT4. They increase the lipoprotein lipase, which break down the triglycerides contained in the chylomicrons and release the free fatty acids or fatty acid oxidation. Also, they cause regulation of adipokines like increase in adiponectin and fibroblast growth factor 21, decrease in TNF-alpha and interleukin 6 levels. All of this together increases the insulin-induced glucose uptake at the level of the cells, peripheral cells like the muscles, and increase in the fatty acid oxidation. There is increase in glucose uptake at the muscles in the adipocytes. In the adipocytes, there is increase in triglyceride storage, and there is increase in fatty acid oxidation level of muscles and in the level of the liver. And by these mechanisms, they will improve the sensitivity to insulin. Next, so how does antidiabetic drug inhibit the glucose excretion by the kidney? In the nephrons of the kidney, glucose is absorbed at the level of the proximal convoluted tubule. At the proximal convoluted tubule, it is the SGLT2, that is a sodium glucose linked cotransporters 2, which mainly help in reabsorption of glucose from the urine into the blood. SGLT2 is a sodium glucose cotransporter which cotransports sodium and glucose from the lumen of the nephron into the blood. Now, SGLT2 inhibitors are drugs which cause the inhibition of the SGLT2 transporter and thereby inhibit the reabsorption of glucose, causing glycosuria or excretion of glucose into the urine, thereby lowering the blood glucose levels. Now, beginning one by one, let's talk about sulfonylureas. The route of administration of sulfonylureas is oral. They are classified into first generation and second generation drugs. What is the difference between them? First generation drugs are less potent and they have a greater risk of hypoglycemia. First generation drugs are longer acting drugs and therefore they will control both the fasting and the postprandial glucose levels. So what are the side effects of sulfonylureas? Hypoglycemia is a common side effect. Other side effects include SIADH, cholestatic jaundice, aplastic anemia, and disulfiram-like reaction because of which it is contraindicated in alcoholics. Other than hypoglycemia, the rest of the side effects are seen with chlorpropamide, which is the first generation sulfonylurea. Now talking about meglitinide analogs. The route of administration of meglitinide analogs is oral. They have a similar mechanism of action and side effect profile as sulfonylureas, except that they're shorter acting and mainly serve to control the postprandial glucose levels. The side effects of meglitinide analogs include they're the same as sulfonylureas, but flu-like symptoms are also present. GLP-1 analogs. The route of administration of GLP-1 analogs is subcutaneous injection, except that semaglutide is given oral. The GLP-1 analogs can cause weight loss and therefore liraglutide is approved as an anti-obesity drug. Now, what are the side effects of GLP-1 analogs? They can cause pancreatitis. They're also known to cause pancreatic and thyroid cancers, although it is a rare side effect. Now, DPP-4 inhibitors, that is dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors. The route of administration of these drugs are oral. These are weight neutral drugs. Linagliptin is a DPP-4 inhibitor that is safe in renal failure patients. Now, what are the side effects of DPP-4 inhibitors, that is dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors? Pharyngitis and upper respiratory tract infection is commonly seen with these drugs. Arthritis is also seen. Hepatotoxicity is seen only with hepatotoxicity. So, hepatotoxicity is a side effect that is seen only with vildagliptin of all the DPP-4 inhibitors. Now let us talk about amylin agonist, that is pramlintide. The mechanism of action of pramlintides are diverse. 1. It works on the brain and suppresses the appetite. 2. It slows down the gastric emptying and thereby decreases the metabolism and absorption of carbohydrates from the intestine, as well as it reduces the appetite. And it also inhibits the release of glucagon from the alpha cells of the pancreas that decreases the glucagon, and therefore this lowers the plasma glucose levels as a whole. The route of administration is a subcutaneous injection. The mechanism of action, as has been mentioned, it decreases the glucagon production, it decreases the gastric motility, prolongs the gastric emptying, also decreases the appetite, and thereby it promotes the weight loss or causes the weight loss. Amylin agonists are renal safe. Now talking about alpha glucosidase inhibitors. So alpha glucosidase is an enzyme which is present on the brush border of the intestine that breaks down the starch into glucose so that it can be absorbed from the intestine. Alpha glucosidase inhibitors will inhibit this brush border enzyme and therefore starch is not broken down into glucose, and therefore there is delay in digestion and absorption of the carbohydrates into the blood, and this therefore will lower the blood glucose levels. The route of administration of these drugs is oral. The mechanism of action has already been mentioned is that it inhibits the alpha glucosidase enzyme and therefore reduces the intestinal absorption of monosaccharides like glucose. And the side effects include steatorrhea and flatulence caused due to undigested carbohydrates in the intestine. Therefore, these are contraindicated in the presence of a gastrointestinal tract infection. Now talking about biguanides like metformin and fenformin. Route of administration of these drugs is oral. The mechanism of action is that they will stimulate the AMP kinase enzyme in the liver and inhibits the hepatic neoglucogenesis. The detailed mechanism of action is mentioned in the next slide. It also lowers the triglyceride levels and is the best drug for microvascular complications of diabetes. Non-diabetic uses of biguanides include PCOD or PCOS. So the side effects include nausea, vomiting, which is a common side effect. Megaloblastic anemia can occur due to vitamin B12 deficiency on prolonged use. Lactic acidosis also occurs and therefore it is contraindicated in renal failure. Fenformin is banned basically due to lactic acidosis. and it is also to be avoided or used in caution in patients of COPD and congestive heart failure. So the mechanism of action of metformin. Metformin, once given orally, enters into the liver. In the liver, metformin through various mechanisms stimulates the AMP kinase enzyme, and this decreases the expression of gluconeogenetic enzymes that decreases the hepatic glucose output. Also, by other mechanisms, it increases the lactate levels or the lactate production, and thereby serum lactate levels are found to be increased in the patient. So talking about SGLT2 inhibitors, it is sodium glucosylene cotransfer 2 inhibitors. Their route of administration is oral. They have additional diuretic and antihypertensive action, and therefore they are recommended in patients of heart failure. Side effects of these drugs include recurrent UTI or urogenital infections due to glycosuria in the patient. Fournier's gangrene can also occur, and bone density loss and pathological fractures can happen with this class of drugs, which is a rare side effect. And there is increased risk of diabetic ketoacidosis. Now, PPR gamma agonists. The route of administration of these drugs is oral. They are safe in renal failure patients. However, they are contraindicated in liver failure. Pioglitazone is available with a black box warning of urinary bladder cancer. The side effects of PPR gamma agonists include anemia, bone density loss, and pathological fractures. They also have antidiuretic action causing sodium and water retention. Therefore, they are contraindicated in diastolic heart failure patients, basically class 3 and class 4. Now, insulin analogs. The route of administration of insulin is by the subcutaneous injection, as it is a peptide hormone. The site of insulin administration is outer aspect of thighs, arms, and the abdomen. The best site for insulin administration is abdomen. However, it is not to be given 2 cm on the umbilicus and the forearm. Non-diabetic ways of insulin analogs include hyperkalemia. They are also recommended for treatment of diabetic ketoacidosis. So, what are the side effects of insulin? Hypoglycemia, weight gain. Weight gain occurs in insulin due to repeated snacking habit. Lipodystrophy. If the insulin injection is given at one particular site over the time and the site is not changed, then this will lead to accumulation of lipid or fat in that particular area, since insulin is an anabolic hormone. This is called as lipodystrophy or lipohypertrophy, and this reduces the effectiveness of insulin action if injected over the same site. That is why, to prevent this lipodystrophy, it is recommended to keep rotating the insulin sites with each use. And it can also cause edema or fluid retention. Thank you.